Go ahead. I'm listening to you.
Okay, well, at that point, I still didn't want to believe it. I still, if you will, was drinking the Fox News Kool-Aid or the CNN Kool-Aid, and of course started to question some things. Now, I did have some access to some computer information. I also was instrumental in moving some special forces around. Getting them the logistics required, getting into country and so forth. And I also spoke to some Australian and British officers about some of the things that were going on and why, because the British and Australian officers I spoke to just seemed to have this attitude that, yeah, of course, come on, man, don't you know what's going on? But they wouldn't come out and say it. Again, I was the all-American conservative, if you will. But then a light went on one day, and what had happened is we had moved around. It would get quiet in Iraq, and things would quiet down. And having been on many missions, it was very safe. I could walk out and buy fruit and walk down the street. No one bothered me. And things would quiet down.
Now, let me just kind of stop you right there.
Okay.
Because what you're saying right now is completely different from the perception of Iraq that we see on Fox News, as you said, and CNN, where it's just constant hostility being shown to us on the news of what's transpiring, in this conflict.
It's the kind of surge Iraq doesn't need, a surge in violence which has claimed hundreds of lives in recent weeks. What's behind it all? And is it a sign of the US troop surge unraveling just weeks before the start of a planned pullback? A return to violence in Iraq? This is Inside Story.
What you're saying right now is that you've been able to walk down the street purchasing fruit basically just as a tourist in the area, more or less.
That is absolutely correct. I was even given food and given recreational equipment to use and to bring back at no charge.
That's amazing.
So what we did notice is when an area would quiet down to a certain level and stability would start to happen, is with my job that I had, I would notice that we would be moving special forces into those areas. Shortly after we'd moved the special forces into the area, an uprising would occur. And then what would happen is, after the uprising would occur, regular army units, unbeknownst to them of who it was, would then start firing back into these cities and towns, thus killing many people and causing now the people who were dormant to rise back up, thinking they're being attacked.
Wait.
And then the city would go basically a little crazy, and then shortly thereafter, CNN or whoever would come into the area.
Okay, wait a second. So, if an area got too quiet in Iraq, all of a sudden, you found out that you were moving special ops into these quiet areas.
That is correct.
And then the next thing you know, there would be a hostility in these areas.
Correct.
Now, are we insinuating here that the special ops were the individuals who once again stirred up the pot, if you will?
It sure looks like that to me.
Okay.
I don't have anything. I can't concrete point to a document or to an individual, but from just being a support personnel, that seemed to be the case, and I'll even take it a little further.
Okay.
To show you that it's not just the Americans. A while back, early on, the first year, the second year into the war, possibly a little later than that, maybe 28 months or something.
Okay.
There was an uprising that made CNN, and what had happened is a bunch of supposedly Arabs went to a wall of a city and started shooting at a passing British armor column. What they then did shortly thereafter is they radioed in and said that they were being fired at by about 8 to 12 personnel. Well, this little town had a sheriff in the town, or the equivalent of a sheriff, and a few deputies. There was a police chief and maybe 8 or 9 deputies.
Okay.
And on his own, he was able to round up these 10 or 12 perpetrators and put them in his jail. Once he got them into the jail, it made CNN News that all these Arabs who had been firing at the British were under police control. Well, what happened is the British then came in and said, release them to us. And the police chief said, I will not release them to you until we interrogate them and see who these people are. Once they started to interrogate them, they found out that they were British special ops soldiers, which totally made the town and the police department not understand what was going on, because the British, after they were being fired up, the British military started lobbing rounds into this little town and blowing everything up. And then when they caught them, all of that slowed up and it was stopping. And now the British demanded those people, and they said, no, we're not going to give them away. In fact, what they were going to do is then parade them in front of the CNN, and CNN stopped the story right at that point. But what happened after that is they crashed through the wall, through the prison with tanks, took the 8 to 12 men out, put them into the tanks, and then turned around and shot the policeman and all his deputies. And it was front page news for a little while, and then it just kind of died. And it was at that point when I was watching that story unravel on CNN that I realized this is standard operating procedure. This is what we do all the time. We also stopped weapons that were coming in. If a National Guard unit stopped a weapon coming in from Syria or some other country or Iran, well, some CIA or high government official would then order us to release that so those AK-47s could make it to the insurgents. So I didn't understand, who are we fighting? What is this war? Later I figured out, I know what the war is about, and I know who we're fighting at this point. But it was a wake-up experience for me. Wow. And it wasn't a very pleasant one.
And I like the fact that you're just being very honest with the reality that you were pretty ignorant to what was transpiring, and all of this really was a wake-up call to you that things weren't really what it seemed to be in Dodge, right?
That is correct.
There was also something else interesting you said to me. You were talking to a British military agent one day in reference to the war that was transpiring there in Iraq, and what was his statement to you?
Well, actually, it wasn't a British. It was an Australian.
Australian, all right.
He was an Australian officer, and in his civilian job, he flew for an airline, the 747, and he also was a pilot for the Australian Air Force, and he was working his desk job. And, I would sit in some evenings and just talk to him. He was very interesting. I enjoyed my time with him. And I had made some kind of a comment as I was trying to put all these things together. Like, why is this happening? And he just looked at me dumbfounded, like it was common knowledge, and said, you Americans just don't ever seem to get it. This whole war is an American war. It's a perpetrated war. And it's a war that you guys are basically, are fighting and dragging other people in it. And all I want to do is finish my time, get back to Australia, get back to my civilian life. And you have got to turn off that TV that has Fox News on it all the time.